Okay, hello everyone. I am in great company today. I'm delighted to be sharing the platform with the wonderful Liz Atkin. I'm sure that pretty much everybody watching knows Liz and has come across Liz's work in some form, in some way, perhaps on a train, perhaps on Twitter, perhaps on Instagram, maybe in another part of the world as she's been traveling around. But Liz is one of the most important people in the UK BFRB community. She is a fierce advocate and a wonderful artist. So I'm just so excited to to have you with me.
Thank you
Um,
for having me, Bridget. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation to contribute to this. It's really important.
Thanks. So we're just going to have a chat, aren't we?
We are. We are. Yes, we
We're
are.
old friends,
We are.
and
And
I
you
just want.
and I guess it's important to say that that friendship is like forged through our lived experience of BFRBs. So we met, God, I don't know how long ago it is now. How many years is it at the conference in
It was 2016 in Dallas, yeah, but
yes, in Dallas? And
spring.
I knew of your work, and I think we met outside. And I rushed up to you, and we started speaking, and we were like immediately in this amazing kind of energy together of sharing our passion about talking about these conditions and how it's driven a huge part of our life and our investigation professionally. And I think, that's something I never thought I'd be doing, but it's, yeah, absolutely at the core of my work. So yeah, I've unexpectedly put skin picking right in the center. Didn't really think that would ever be the case.
Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
let's begin by you kind of summarizing, if you can, if it's possible, your journey with your work, and then we can talk about, how we met and our friendship and
Yeah,
relationship from there.
absolutely. So I've had skin picking since early childhood. So I remember doing this very young. I think the moment I knew my family members did this, but I didn't know what it was, and I certainly didn't know it was something that was going to take over my behavior in such an enormous way. But very young, like 4, 5, 6, I've got these really early memories of picking and hiding it, and quite quickly recognizing I had to lie about it. So my earliest memory of this is I picked all these blemishes on my arms as a kid. I had these little bumps that kids often get, and I sat and squeezed them all and had these lumps on my arms. And it was a day before a sports day, and I now recognize I was probably quite nervous about the sports day, and it was a behavior that I ended up doing. And a parent pointed out these marks on my arms, and I lied and said it was chickenpox. And at 5 or 6 at a school event, that's really sharply a memory of like the first lie of many of disguising or deflecting questions about this disorder. And I think that occupied me way into my 30s, that I did what I could to hide this behavior from other people. And the kind of guilt and shame that went with that was enormous. So in my teens and my 20s, yeah, the disorder really kind of established itself as my hormones changed. So my picking would be my face, my body, my feet, my knees, my hands, my cuticles, and the disorder would kind of move around depending on where there were wounds and where I was kind of paying too much attention to. So really hard to manage. And I think quite early I started adjusting my clothing, wearing long sleeves, high necks. There are photos of me as a teenager in roll necks in the height of summer, covering marks up on my face with makeup, and this was just a constant presence in my life. And I think now I understand the disorder, and I've really paid attention to those nuances of it, of the kind of tension that would rise and not being able to sort of manage it, the energy of it in my body that I've really struggled with and would lose hours of time. And I think now I have a much better understanding of what that is and how my body plays out this disorder. And it's taken a long time to have a lot of compassion for myself and for
Mm-hmm.
how the young Liz kind of handled this without the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge and the information. And I wonder if you have
Yeah,
similar experience of that in
yeah,
hair pulling. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's funny to hear you say there, like, to hear you laugh when you describe a roll neck in the height of summer. And you're
Yeah.
laughing, but it's the most distressing thing,
Yeah.
isn't it? To be so profoundly ashamed to reveal the bodily damage
Yeah.
of either hair loss or skin picking.
Yeah.
Um, the lengths that we go to
Yeah.
keep that hidden, the stories we tell,
Yeah.
the lies that cover it up,
Yeah.
are profound and completely shape how we interact with people, how we move in
Absolutely.
the world. They
Absolutely.
become the only way we know how to live.
Yeah. I mean,
And
then
so
there are,
breaking that silence
yeah.
and turning this into your career and
Yeah.
talking about it every day. I mean, that's just, and
Oh,
I'm the
yeah.
same,
Yes.
that shift changes who you are.
Totally. And I mean, those things coming into adulthood, I've talked about some early childhood experiences, but I would sit in particular seats in restaurants if I clocked that the light was too bright and the scabs under my makeup would be visible. Oh, I'll sit on this chair because it's slightly
Yeah,
more shadowy. I mean,
yeah.
like you say, it completely shapes behavior in every situation. And the lies and the secrecy and the hiding the behavior was so compulsive and so difficult to manage. And for years I thought I was the only person that did this. That's the other thing that I feel so passionate about,
Mhm.
saying this connected to my lived experience, like out in the world. This is something that has transformed how I have come to terms with it, how I've connected with other people. It's changed everything about how I've come to sort of listen to the disorder in a positive way, not a kind of this is a demon that I want to get rid of. If you'd asked me this as a teenager, I probably would have said, my God, I'll get rid of it. I'll take the pill that's going to make this stop. And actually now I understand the disorder and I pay attention to it. And it's part of how I function. It's part of um, my kind of regulation, the regulation of anxiety, the regulation of stress, big emotions, small emotions,
Yeah.
boredom, those nuances of human behavior are part of being alive. I don't want to switch off my tension. That's part, and something
Mm.
makes me stressed. It's about being a human being. Life is complicated and
Mhm.
busy,
Mhm.
so that has become a much more um, calm understanding of it. And sometimes I feel like I can step back a bit and go, oh, right, my picking energy's here. Like I look down and my fingers are bleeding. Right. Okay. So what's going on? Am I hungry? Am I overtired? What am I stressed about? What's my brain thinking about? What's subconsciously bothering me? What's
Mhm.
bothering me very immediately?
Mhm.
And then it's right, okay, so that's okay. We can like take a moment, body. We can like calm in a different way. So for me, it's been about noticing when the picking would happen, and those patterns of behavior slowly started to connect to my creative practice. And I never thought I'd be I'd find drawing. I mean, I started drawing by accident. It wasn't something that I thought was anything really to do with my skin picking. And now I totally see the two things having a
Yeah.
relationship,
Yeah.
and it's just completely connected
Mhm.
together. So I guess it's worth saying for a long time I made artwork that was very visual about my skin. So lots of kind of self-portraits, working with the texture of my body. That's kind of embracing the scars, the places I would pick. So my face, my chest, my back. I would take kind of photographs with textures on the body. So working with acrylic paint or clay or different elements that kind of put this texture between me and the frame, I guess. I always feel like my body has this texture to it. As a skin picker, I scan for texture, and the fingertips finding something to pick at, that's all part of the behavior. So for a long time I made work that was very photographic, and then I got really unwell. I didn't know I was sort of heading for this nervous breakdown, but I was very stressed. I was picking my skin very badly. I wasn't sleeping. Everything just spiraled out of control, and I ended up having a year off work to just recover. Started therapy, started medication for depression. And my friend, as I was in this kind of
Mhm.
crisis point, bought me a box of charcoal. And, her jokey present was, you're always getting really messy, like your artwork's really messy. Here's some charcoal. And at the time, I remember thinking, well, I don't draw. Like I put things on my body and but I don't draw. So as I was having therapy, I was started to sort of return to work, and I got a job in a different part of London. So I was having to commute and I was having panic attacks and picking really, really intensely on the train. So my hands were bleeding before I'd even get where I need to go. And it was the therapist that actually said you need to find something to occupy yourself on these journeys. And sort of, I think it all sort of evolved by chance. I took this little notebook and this charcoal that my friend had got me, and on one of the trains, I realized I could do this commute without picking, and I'd be completely occupied. You know, I'd draw, I'd fill a couple of pages of this sketchbook, and lots of texture, lots of smudginess, and it was, you know, it was lovely. And then the sketchbook ran out on one of these journeys, and in a split-second decision, it was rush hour. There were newspapers on every seat. I just drew over a newspaper that was next to me. And that turned into my art practice for 5 years, that I would deliberately draw on newspapers. And in the process of that, the thing that was immediate is the newspaper has a sort of texture to it. There's images in the paper. So I would graffiti, kind of draw over the top of these images and adapt them and add texture to them. And people in the carriage would look at me like, what's going on? And slowly these little conversations started happening. You know, why are you drawing? And then, you know, I'd say, well, I'm drawing because I actually have anxiety, and I pick my hands, and it stops me, you know, once I'm charcoaly, I can't pick my fingers, and it keeps me occupied. And then people would start saying back to me, oh, I pick my skin. I've got scars all across my shoulders, or oh God, I'm always picking my feet. My feet are, you know, I've got these awful things on my feet. So we'd have this conversation, and these little kind of interactions would happen, anonymous encounters on public transport. And I started just passing drawings to passengers, and that led to a whole kind of deliberate way of sharing this information, because I realized that if that's happening on a train journey, you know, and I'm on a tube for an hour, I might have 20 of those conversations. What if I'm actively like enjoying that and sharing the information and saying publicly, well, I'm drawing because I draw because I have this disorder. This is called skin picking. It has a name, it has a diagnosis. And astonishing kind of adventures came from that. So it all happened by chance. I wasn't drawing before that, really. And of course, my recovery developed enormously because I'd found this, not only the kind of intervention, you know, drawing serves such a purpose for me creatively. You know, it switches my mind into this very sort of immediate place. It's very much about being mindful, being in this moment. Each mark on the paper, each decision, each smudge, each movement of my hands, you know, keeps me focused on this creative activity. So for anxiety, which, you know, takes me off in all these different directions and can be really overwhelming, it slows everything down. So I found the benefit of that enormous. And then yeah, the kind of tactile thing, the putting a barrier onto the surface of my fingers, you know, charcoal immediately does that. So there's this tactile stimulus, I guess, that really helps the disorder. It feels nice. It feels, you know, a lot of people have a strong reaction to charcoal because it's like, it's got this texture. But for a skin picker like me, that's like, oh, that feels good, you know. So the sort of, yeah, that energy is important. Yeah,
it's just amazing on so many levels. And you know, I remember when I was doing my fieldwork for my PhD, and you took part in the research, and I, as an anthropologist, was able to spend time just hanging out with people and getting to know them. And one of the most amazing experiences was coming with you to an art event that you had been invited to participate in, where you were asked to do this kind of floor to ceiling charcoal drawing, and just a live drawing. And I, you know, accompanied you as the anthropologist.
Yes.
And to watch you in action, and to kind of observe and participate and have conversations while you were drawing, it taught me so much about the sensory aspects you're talking about there. And you know, while you were drawing, I remember asking you, how does it feel? And you said it feels like the disorder, you know, fast and messy and slightly heart racing, and the speed of it. But everyone in the room was transfixed at what you were doing. And then I was able to kind of see how those conversations just happened. And because I was like your shadow that day, I was also talking to people, and instantly people saying, oh, I know someone who does this, or I, you know, have hair pulling, or I have skin picking. And when we go back to what you said about you know, how alone we feel. It's remarkable that those, you know, as soon as you start talking, the world just opens up really. And there are so
Totally.
many people who are so ashamed because of the lack of awareness.
Yeah. And the thing that frustrates me the most, I know we've had so many conversations over the years about this, is how common this is. I can go to, I was at a dinner party when I first started talking about this stuff, and a friend I'd known, I don't know, 9 years, quietly said to me in the kitchen, you know, you do this, you talk out loud, you say these things about skin picking. I pull my hair out, I pull my eyelashes out. And, you know, we'd known each other all this time. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God. And suddenly it just opened up all this communication between us. And the thing that I think happens when you meet someone who lives with these disorders, we've all got that experience of the behavior that aligns with it, the you know, the, as you said before, like adapting your life to fit this disorder around it. And perhaps the behavior makes you make different choices that
Yeah.
you don't want to be making, but you make them to kind of make sure it's sort of hidden and it's
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
on the peripheral. But actually, it's so part of it's often the first thing my body does. And
Yeah.
what changed for me, compassionate wise, is recognizing that. And the more I push it down, the more I try and I'm not going to pick, the worse for me the picking episode will be. I will lose hours at the
Yeah.
mirror. So actually, to hear it arrive, to feel it arrive in my
Mm.
body, much better to go, right, here it is. And
Yeah.
yeah, it happened 10 minutes ago. That's okay. I have a disorder. I have this
Mm.
in my body. This is, you know, this is part of what my
Yeah.
sensations tell me. And I've found a lot more peace knowing that that's just part of life for me,
Mhm.
and that's okay. It's taken a long time, and it's taken a lot of learning through community and through
Yeah.
different organizations. You know, I didn't know other people around the world do this. Is it one in
I know.
20 that is now the statistic I think we
I
have?
know. I know.
You know, so in a room where I might be working, there's likely to be a handful of people that do this or have
Yeah.
this or know a family member who does this or
Yeah.
a friend who does this. So, you know, as
Yeah.
soon as the words are said out loud, that connection opens up, and
Yeah.
it's a, you know, it's a connection that
Yeah. But I think when,
and
you know, so much of the shame is reinforced by people around us who really also don't understand what's going on.
yeah,
So until you have kind of support networks and understanding and more information, families dealing with this, you know,
yes,
can only do so much really.
yeah,
And I think
that's so
that's
true.
such an important part of our outreach and awareness raising, is to also connect with the loved ones who are dealing with it on an everyday basis and
Yeah,
don't mean to, but might be making these things worse. Like you say, you know, by accepting it's there, acknowledging
yeah,
it, kind of writing it out, moving on, rather than
yeah, yeah,
every time these behaviors arise, kind of feeling so terrible that you're doing them, and then the self-blame cycle
yeah.
just reproduces itself, right?
Totally. And that, I think that awareness in family members, friends, partners, you know, it took a long time as well through this sort of learning that actually when someone says don't pick or you're picking, you know,
Mm.
actually is that the right way to handle it for me? And I found it better to find ways to communicate with family members and friends. You know, if you see me doing it, just put your hand on my arm. That works for me. I can go, oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
what is the gentle, you know, having ownership of that lived experience has been really important. And you know, sometimes it infuriates me if someone keeps pointing it out, particularly if it keeps coming up. I'm like, I know, I know. So
yeah,
you know, finding a balance with that is important, but it's about knowledge. And it's this, we come back to this again, that if family members understand, it's, you know, there are genetic links, there are hereditary links, there's a lot
mm,
going on. It's not just you know, a bad habit that you
yeah,
should be able to switch off, which
exactly.
is often what we've heard for these conditions, which we know is not the case. And we've talked a lot over the years about social media. You know, in our lifetime, the way to connect with others around the world has, you know, radically transformed. I'm it still
Mhm.
astonishes me. I can go on social media and click skin picking and all this stuff will come up. And, you know, TikTok, we've got lots of advocates, you know, creating TikTok stories, and like, you know, that the number of generations now that can share this knowledge and information is really powerful. And I think that's in our favor, that, you know, we're in this kind of turning point of knowledge being shared. Yeah, and I think back to the teenage version of me, I wouldn't have even known how or where to find this information. It was something I hid at
Yeah,
doctors. You know, I that's how embedded the kind of hiding and secrecy was for me. So amazing that if you experience this now, you possibly are finding information much quicker, which makes a charity in the UK for skin picking and hair pulling so vital, because
Yeah.
brings everything to one place.
We were talking about when we first met, weren't we? Reminiscing and thinking, how many years ago was that now? In the before times, the before COVID times, when
Before
we were
COVID,
able to hug a
definitely.
stranger.
Yes, yes.
But you weren't a stranger, really. I mean, this is the beauty of this community, is that I knew of your work, and I think you had heard about what I was doing and
That's
agreed
right.
to chat to me about my research and take part. But seeing you across, I think it was the pool in the Dallas
Yeah,
hotel
yeah.
room at
You
the
were sat,
International
I
Conference
remember it
Hall.
so clearly. You were sat on
Yeah.
one of the sun lounges, but with your notebook out, and you were writing lots of things. And I looked across, and we hugged, didn't we? We hugged the minute we met each other.
Yeah.
And I think we sat outside, and this happens so much, and I know you feel the same. When you meet someone that has a BFRB, like the sentences almost get finished by the other person, and you hear those sensations, those memories, those sort of different elements of living with a disorder come from the person talking with you. So it's this instant kind of connection, and I think we felt it. I think I felt it immediately,
Yeah.
like, oh my God, where have you been? Like, there's this magical sort of energy there that, wow, this person really knows what this feels like. And that,
Yeah.
sometimes there's just no language for that. It's so astonishing to sort of sit with someone who has that experience. And the
Yeah.
conference in Dallas, that was the first experience I'd ever had of being in a room with hundreds of people that have
I
skin picking
know.
and hair pulling, and those conferences are so emotional, because all those years of hiding and being scared and not having the information and just thinking you're on your own, and
Mm.
suddenly you're in a room where someone on the other side of the room sort of says something, and the identification is so strong. I often feel
Yeah.
like, oh, that's me. I know that, I know that better than anything else.
I know.
And that feeling is really powerful, and I think a lot of the sort of connection now that can happen, and the number of advocates that are sharing their story, this potential for this to be a charity to reach
Mm.
so many people.
Mm.
We touched on this in our conversation earlier about family members, and how families are connected to this experience in a body focused repetitive behavior. We're all part of how to cope with that challenge when it comes up, and the more that knowledge can be shared, the more that can spread out across the country.
Yeah.
Just the amount of knowledge that could change,
Yeah.
and that power that can be shared of strategies for recovery.
And I mean, that conference where we met was your first conference, but it was my second. And I think I had that experience the year before of walking into that ballroom with like 500 people and just being completely overwhelmed,
Yeah, yeah,
and feeling like I had gone from knowing a couple of people who had a BFRB to being surrounded by them.
yeah,
And that was really the pushing point for me, although I was researching this, was we have to have more opportunities to bring people together in the UK. And that was the decision that spurred Pavitt and I to immediately basically set up a London support group
yeah.
a few months before I met you in Dallas.
That's right.
And sharing that, we saw that so often, and we still do in the support groups, where people attend for the first time and just break down in tears because
Yeah,
they have never ever experienced, having, like you say, having your sentences finished, or the way that people would just kind of laugh at the absurdity of all of the ways where they hide, have, the ridiculous methods they have used over the years to
yeah,
hide their hair loss or scars, and to be able to laugh about it and see
yeah.
people nodding around the room and to know you
That
weren't
nodding,
alone.
oh my God. And it's that identification. It's so it astonishes me that, these conditions you seem to feel like you're the only person when it's taking place. And that isolation that happens. So, the relief, the tears
Yeah.
I cried at those conferences were just relief to be in a room with other people, that I didn't have to explain this. I didn't, I could wear
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that conference in particular. I really remember being like, I could come into this room without my makeup on. I'm in a place where I can be completely safe. And the
Mm.
strategies that I put up at
Yeah.
that point in my life, they can fall away a bit here, and I can have that
Yeah.
freedom. It's a huge part of recovery
Amazing.
to feel that pressure being taken off that we put
And
on
we
ourselves.
laughed about
Yeah.
meeting in the swimming pool, across
Yes.
the river. But the swimming pool was so
Oh,
important at those
so
events because
yeah.
children and young people were able to go swimming together, and that is
Yeah.
an activity that so many of us have avoided
I
because
avoided swimming
mm,
for, I mean, this is a thing in my life now. I didn't swim for decades. I didn't own a swimsuit. And in fact, I bought, I don't know if they still do, but Speedo was one of the only brands that did this wide, high-necked swimsuit. And it meant my back was completely covered. And, all these years later, I now live by the sea. So I'm swimming every day. And I feel like I am claiming back swimming with my skin out, because for decades this was not something I felt able to do. My
mm,
scars were too visible, my wounds were too visible, and it was just like, an
yeah,
activity I absolutely love fell out of my life because of this disorder. And it's that determination to put it back, like,
yeah,
when we start to get better, we claim back, like, I'm going to
mm,
wear this, I'm talking to you in a short sleeve top. I didn't own sleeveless tops for years. I didn't own a t-shirt because,
I know.
I was too uncomfortable that there were scars on my shoulders and my arms.
And the
That
waves
that
behind you, you're
changes,
like,
like, hold on, like, I got married in a dress where my scars were visible. And
yeah,
the liberation that can come from claiming back
mm,
something that this disorder took away. Like, I feel very
absolutely,
strongly about people feeling able to claim their bodies back, and
yeah,
just as they are. That those moments at the swimming pool in Dallas, I still remember the kids all running past me and thinking, wow, like,
mm,
these kids aged 10, 11, when when skin picking was presenting in my life so powerfully, it was
yeah,
just like the place of greatest terror. And just the freedom to see that,
yeah.
it was wonderful. Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
wonderful. And those are the kind of moments and experiences that I'm just desperate to to bring to the British community and allow young people
Absolutely.
to have those chances because I think we're still so far behind what they've been doing in
Absolutely.
the States and in other parts of the world. And it's a bit of an outrage really that we we haven't done this until
Yeah.
now, but we've been busy. We had a
Oh yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
Um,
But this is the
and that
moment to
was the
claim it. This is the moment to claim it, Bridget. And I'm so pleased that this moment of kind of reaching out for support is happening, because the ability to turn BFRB's support groups into a charity that can reach other people. The idea that we could have a conference here, and
yeah,
the UK and Ireland can bring together a community across the country to attend something where that knowledge is shared, and those experiences we've had on the other side of the world, why are they on the other side of the world? They can happen here in the UK. So
exactly.
I feel very delighted to be supporting this. This is a moment to
Well,
push
you're at
this
the
forward.
you and so many of the other activists in the UK are just, at the heart of all of this, and we're so grateful for all the work you've been doing, and just so excited at an opportunity to kind of bring all of us together and do regular events and to connect all of the individuals who are working like tirelessly to spread the word and to improve the lives of people and their families and loved ones, and to advocate with professionals and to really take things to the next level. So
Amazing.
thank you, Liz, for
Pleasure.
for everything that you do, but for your time today as well. And thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you for
I'll
being
put
here.
the links to Liz's social media handles and you can see more about her work if you don't already know about it. If you've been but, thanks, Liz. We love you.
A pleasure. Thank you.